Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
And now, the Federal Drive with Terry Gerton, sponsored by GEHA.
Welcome to the Federal Drive on Federal News Network. It's Friday, April 17th. I'm your host, Terry Gerton, and I'm glad you're here. As the week wraps up, we're looking at some of the quieter ways federal work is evolving, beyond the rhetoric to how agencies think about mission and responsibility. Coming up on this hour of the Federal Drive, DHS no longer has a compliance mindset for cybersecurity. The former DHS CISO tells us why. Plus, a new digital catalog is changing how the public can engage with America's overseas war memorials and records. Those stories and much more ahead during this hour of the Federal Drive. We begin with this. The White House has set a goal to reduce military spouse unemployment by 5%, but there's only so much it can do since it significantly scaled back federal hiring. Now the Defense Department is stepping in with new efforts to address the issue. Federal News Network's Anastasia Obis is here with more details. Anastasia, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Terry.
What's the latest on this from the Defense Department then?
Yeah, so DoD's Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness recently issued a memo telling the department to make maximum use of existing hiring authorities and flexibilities to support military spouses. These flexibilities include authorizing alternative work sites for spouses and also prioritizing military spouses for non-competitive appointments before they consider other candidates. So here's one example. DoD schools are now allowed to hire military spouses as soon as they receive change of station orders instead of waiting until 30 days before they have to move. So that's a big progress. The memo also introduces new reporting requirements that will help the Defense Department understand how many spouses were considered for a role, how many were selected, how many were rejected, and why. It also requires the military services to share recommendations for improving military spouse hiring authorities. The department also wants hiring managers to take advantage of this existing website. It's called Military Spouse Education and Career Opportunities. Hiring managers would have to be trained to use the system, and they would have to be given access to it. But the idea is that they will use the inventory to identify military spouses who are eligible for roles. There will also be what's called open continuous job announcements for military spouses. So hiring paths will be limited only to military spouses. And these postings will allow hiring managers to build kind of resume banks and quickly fill vacancies without even advertising them.
Anastasia, what are you hearing about what people think are good things in this memo and where there are gaps?
Yeah, I spoke with Sue Hopping. She's the founder and president of the National Military Spouse Network. And she said that seeing this stringent reporting requirement is quite heartening. The military services are supposed to deliver these reports monthly, and this is something that the department has never tracked consistently or at all. But Sue said she hopes the department doesn't miss out on this opportunity to get more granular with this data, like having a data point on roles that offer alternative work flexibilities and allow spouses to work remotely or to telework. If the data is kind of surface level, it will not be as useful as it might be. It will not be able to tell a full story. As for the gaps, first, we talked about alternative work sites. The memo encourages those alternative work sites and hiring flexibilities, but you said the proof is in the pudding. How are they going to implement this? They can make all the suggestions they want, but unless they follow through, the memo won't really make a difference. So we'll have to see how this unfolds and how they decide to go about implementing this. For alternative work sites, it's something that I wanted to highlight. It's not really clear how effective that would be. It would really depend on the types of jobs offered to military spouses or the types of jobs the department will be pushing spouses towards. So let's say if it's classroom jobs, they will require you to be on site. Then we don't really know how helpful the flexibility part would be.
Anastasia, it seems like a lot of these proposals in this memo have been around for a while. So it's one thing to put out this memo directing installations and commanders to follow it, but entirely another, as you mentioned, to make it implementable. What's the strategy for getting from memo to practice?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that will need to come into place. First of all, military spouses will have to be aware of the resources that are available to them. And that would require a whole marketing push to make sure that this is how the Defense Department is doing things now. This is how they're looking for candidates. And so make sure that your profiles are updated, your information is updated, and you keep up with it. Then it will require another push, which is making sure that hiring managers are trained. They know that this is available to them and that the push is to hire military spouses. So the Defense Department will have to bring a lot of these communities on board. And by the way, they're piloting this within the next 18 months. So we will see how it unfolds. If you ask me, it's pretty ambitious to ensure that everyone's on board. The word is out. This is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it.
How far does this go to address the barriers that military spouses really face? Are there other issues that this memo doesn't resolve?
So as you mentioned, the White House wants to reduce military spouse unemployment by 5%. That's also ambitious. And with this memo, it's just one agency introducing these changes. And by the way, we'll see how they're implemented. But military spouses work across the federal government. So hopefully other agencies will follow and they will have their version of this policy. Also, one of the biggest barriers is childcare, access to affordable and reliable childcare. There will not be meaningful change unless childcare is addressed. And for the childcare piece of it, one thing that is happening right now is military services are trying to push for higher rate for childcare workers. It's something that they've been working on for a couple of years because Congress approved higher rates for childcare workers, but for some reason they haven't been able to implement it. Now it looks like service by service, they're making progress, but we will see how exactly it's implemented in practice. And then there is also the retention issue that is not addressed in the memo, but is very important.
That's Federal News Network's Anastasia Obis. Anastasia, thanks for bringing us this story. We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you, Terry.
You can find her story at federalnewsnetwork.com. Up next, DHS no longer has a compliance mindset for cybersecurity, and the former DHS CISO tells us why. This is the Federal Drive with Terry Gerton on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Drive with Terry Gerton on Federal News Network. During his 2 years as the Chief Information Security Officer for the Homeland Security Department, Hemant Baidwan says he has a lot to be proud of. He led the development of a DHS cybersecurity strategy, and he helped move the agency further along in its zero trust journey. Baidwan, who left the role in March, tells Federal News Network's executive editor Jason Miller that his most significant accomplishment was changing the department's cybersecurity mindset.
The biggest one that I'm really proud is helping shift our focus from purely like kind of compliance-driven approaches from a cybersecurity standpoint towards really operational risk management. And again, like I spoke a little bit about like, look, the AI threats or the adversary using AI, that is a real thing. And we just don't have the luxury to rely on some of the legacy processes right now to be able to secure our systems and our data. So this approach is I'm extremely proud of shifting to this approach, but it's also just something that is extremely critical and is needed. It's not something that, we can wait, honestly. And we are in a critical time right now in Fed space and actually cyberspace across that this is going to become one of the requirements. It's not even nice to do, right? Shifting to our operational risk management, the risk operations center per se. Is just something that really needs to be done. So extremely proud of that. I spoke a little bit about the cybersecurity strategy, implementing that, developing that in close collaboration with both internal, department, CISOs, and cyber communities, and workforce, but others as well, including, procurement and financial sector, and all of those within DHS, and certainly working closely also with the federal CISO Council and friends and partners there in other agencies, building that strategy across for internal to DHS, right, on areas that we need to focus on. How do we shifting our risk management framework approach to how do we automate a lot of those functions? How do we make sure that we have the right visibility across the real-time visibility across the environment, not just for one system, but completely across the environment? How do we make sure that we are now further advancing our zero trust efforts across the department, with identity being the key pillar there? So developing that, getting that implemented, always say, it's not, you can write strategies, policies all day. You can buy the best tools in the world all day, but it's really till you have the right people, implementing and delivering those. It's just as good as, having a piece of paper or having, just a tool that's just sitting there, and not being used effectively. So getting that buy-in, getting the collaboration was really critical. Getting that strategy implemented across the department was really very important, especially, I think, that was 2 years ago. So really around the time where, we started really looking at, okay, how do we make sure that the use of AI is good and secure within department, but how do we also use AI to then enable proactive mitigation to kind of get the left off the SOC and incidents and threats that we are seeing was just something I'm extremely, extremely proud of.
I want to talk a little bit about the move toward, as you said, operational risk management. What did that mean for DHS? Like, what was it before? What is it today? Give me maybe an example of how things have changed.
Federal government, it's always kind of operated from as a compliance, right? Doing cybersecurity through compliance, which is, again, not saying that compliance is not important. I mean, it is critical, and we want to make sure that those baselines and those standards are followed and they're implemented effectively. The challenge in the past years, right, has been that we are, too focused on doing that. So when there is something that is not done, right, like we create these big plans, how do we mitigate those? And it's just a slower process because it's driven through that kind of compliance side of things versus looking at, well, what is my kind of attack path that I'm seeing today for my systems that someone literally today can take advantage of and compromise our systems and data. Like, that's really the shift, right? When I speak about kind of cybersecurity through compliance versus really operationalizing and this risk operations center, that's really the shift. That now you are still, compliance becomes basically a outcome. You do things right, you're burning down the risk, you're securing your system, it starts with good implementation, yes, good configurations, good standards, all of that needs to be followed from the start. But this continuous monitoring piece and doing that through the compliance lens it's slow, right? And we just don't have, like I said, luxury to have that much time to really burn down the risk to mitigate some of these challenges that we're seeing. So the operationalizing that piece basically means that now the Risk Operations Center is focused on looking at real-time kind of threats that is impacting us, risk that is impacting, and to be able to then secure, or remediate a misconfiguration or vulnerability that's coming up. Ideally, we get in front of the vulnerability before CVE, before KEV is released, because when KEV is released, CISA did do an amazing job, but it's already exploited at the time, right? That's why it becomes a KEV. So you don't want to be the system, right? That's the reason that it became a KEV. So getting in front of that, left of that, trying to look at risk issues that are coming up and securing and kind of, again, it could be multiple different things that you need to do in order to really kind of make the system and the data protected and secure. But it's really about operationalize them through that lens where you are monitoring real time, have the right visibility. It's not just right visibility into my vulnerabilities. You have the right visibility in your identity, your architecture, And, what are the other things this is touching? So you can map, develop those attack paths and then start kind of making, burning down the risk again and making systems secure.
You talk about this, it's a combination of things. It's a combination of changing the culture, the way people look at it, getting kind of out of that compliance mindset, which I think folks have been talking about for many, many years in the federal cybersecurity field. Can you point to maybe one thing or two things that you said, hey, we used to do it this way, now we do it that way, and that's showing how we are looking at operational risk management? I'm looking for maybe a use case, an example, without obviously creating any sort of sensitivities.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the risk management framework, right? The ATO process, as we all love and absolutely just, are fan of, right? I'm sure. But one of the challenges with the traditional way, and I'll just kind of generally speaking, government, right? Like one of the challenges, the way we've done that has been like kind of point in time assessments, where we are, kind of either annually or, or certain period, we are evaluating, assessing controls. Shifting that to basically say that, look, we don't have the luxury, although we are doing the vulnerability scans, for example, at the right intervals, that's great. But we don't have the luxury to just say, I did this one big assessment and, in January now, I'm good. The bad guys are not coming after us till probably December. So we have a lot of time. So let's, we are good. Let's do another assessment in December and kind of go from there. We just, it worked at the time, but it just can't. So for us, it was important for us to basically kind of shift to saying that, okay, we have the right architecture, we have the right tools, we have the right telemetry flowing in, which is, I can understand like that's the challenge that, within itself, but we have that. So if we are doing that, then to be able to, how do we leverage that data that we're already getting to be able to then say, well, can we use that data to test some controls and see are they, is MFA effectively implemented, just as an example? The answer is yes, that you can use the data that already exists, right, that is continuously being kind of, obtained and evaluated. You can use that to be able to then translate that data into, pardon me for saying this, but like compliance language.
Hemant Baidwan is the former Chief Information Security Officer at the Homeland Security Department and now Executive CISO at Knox Systems, speaking there with Federal News Network's Executive Editor, Jason Miller. You can find their full interview at federalnewsnetwork.com. Search Ask the CIO. Still to come, ARPA H's One Cure program is betting that smarter design can expand cancer care to more people faster. But first, a new digital catalog is changing how the public can engage with America's overseas war memorials and records. You're listening to The Federal Drive with Terry Gerton on Federal News Network. Welcome back to The Federal Drive with Terry Gerton on Federal News Network. For decades, the American Battle Monuments Commission has served as guardian of U.S. military cemeteries and memorials around the world. A new online catalog now extends that mission by making records and collections accessible far beyond these physical sites. We'll look at who benefits most and what this access makes possible with Charlotte Munier, Museum Curator for the American Battle Monuments Commission. Ms. Munier, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Before we dig into the details, I want to have you tell our listeners about the American Battle Monuments Commission, what it is, what your mission is.
So the American Battle Monuments Commission is a federal agency, and we maintain and manage U.S. military cemeteries, monuments, and memorials overseas. We have about 26 cemeteries, 31 monuments, and they are spread in 17 countries.
And you just crossed the 100-year threshold a couple of years ago. What has been maybe the biggest change or two in managing these assets over that century?
So our mission mainly is to maintain these sites the way they were built, to honor the fallen and to welcome the next of kin and the visitors. But our mission has evolved because with the way the reason the people are coming, we used to have a lot of next of kin, and now we have also people coming to visit the sites, not necessarily because they're related to a soldier, So we have to also welcome them and provide them with our services. We have added to some of our sites some visitor centers. We are bringing a level of interpretation to the mission, but the main mission, the center of the mission, which is taking care of the cross and the grass, is still the same. And I think we are very proud to be able to maintain the mission as it started originally 100 years ago.
And how challenging is it these days to manage that international relationship?
Well, we have a very good relationship between the host nation where the cemeteries are and the cemeteries itself. It's very important for us to build a strong relationship between the local communities. We are working with, for example, local schools, local cultural structures to build a network and to have group coming to visit our sites. So it's very important for us to present the best aspect of the United States and to talk about the story of the United States in the host nation, but also to acknowledge the fact that we are hosted in foreign nations and how to work with them with good relationship.
Well, let's come back to that mission the mission expansion that you alluded to earlier about expanding beyond just next of kin to all kinds of visitors. The Commission has just put up an online catalog that displays all kinds of assets and memorial types of items. Tell us about that and what's new.
Yes. So the online catalog is a great project, and I'm thrilled to be working on it. It's a project we've been working on for the past several years. It's I would say, a window to the collection from the APMC. So my work as a museum curator is to collect, preserve, maintain, and communicate the historic heritage of the agency. And the online catalog is a way to provide access to all these beautiful pieces that we have to the most. It's not always easy for people to come to our sites or to visit our sites. So it's a way for us to be able to publish everything we have in the collection. The collection is content. I can talk about that for hours, but we have a lot of historic documents and historic objects, and these elements are talking about the soldier and the battle, of course, but also the story about the agency itself and how we design, build, and maintain the sites. It's uniforms, but it's also blueprints and photographs of events. It covers the whole area of what the agency does. It's covering all of our missions.
I'm speaking with Charlotte Meunier. She's museum curator for the American Battle Monuments Commission. I had a chance to, scan through the catalog a little bit, and it really is stunning. It's clearly not just for historians or not just next of kin. Who do you hope uses it and how?
Well, we hope everyone will use it. We are willing to touch as many people as possible. We are hoping to interest visitors that want to come to cemeteries, people that cannot access cemeteries, other cultural institutions that will be interested in, for example, borrowing some of our items to build exhibition. We are interested in connecting with teachers, guides, anyone who is interested in our mission should be able to come on the online catalog, go through everything we have. We have, as I was saying, we have paper documents, we have sculpture, art pieces, we have building features, we have furniture. Our collection is covering a lot of aspects and topics, so we are hoping to interest as many people as possible.
One of the most powerful experiences is actually visiting one of these cemeteries or monuments in person. How do you hope people kind of replicate that experience through the catalog? How does it tug on heartstrings, I guess, if you will?
So you have several ways of enjoying it. You can either just go through the catalog itself and, do a research, or just go, jump from an object to another. But we also add the curator's collection, which is another feature. Every month, we are going to highlight some pieces of the collection, either one object or several of them, creating connection between all of them. The first one we did for March was the one about the Lafayette Escadrille. So we gathered 16 objects related to the pilot from the Escadrille. Next month, we will be highlighting the Pershing desk, which is a desk we have in our Paris office that we just did a conservation treatment on it. And then we will be able, 1 month after another, to highlight some of our elements. We can, for example, we have a lot of, as I was saying, historic furnishing. We can, for example, recreate the room with connecting all the records from each piece of furniture and show people what a reception room in Normandy or in Cambridge look like. And so we will be able to create this virtual exhibition to show people how the objects interact with each other, telling another story or showing another aspect of the story.
How does the online catalog then connect with, for example, the lesson plans that you also share on the website?
Yeah, so it connects with the lesson plans for teacher. Well, it's a tool that can be used for so many aspects. You can, for example, take a theme, like a woman in war or Gold Star Mother, and you can find in the online catalog a series of photographs. You can find banners, historic objects that Gold Star Mother were carrying with them. And a teacher can use the record of the object that they will find online to do their own virtual exhibition if they want. They can print the picture, they can print the records, they can have all the information such as date, materials, description. And of course, I would say it's a first step, but then they can also reach out to us and ask us more questions if they want, and we can help them, build anything that they want to do that. So I would say it supports the interpretation mission from the ABMC. It brings other material, other documentation, and it connects with this mission as well as the other ABMC's mission.
As America celebrates its 250th birthday this year, is the Commission looking to roll out any other sorts of exhibits or programs to support that?
Yes, we have several events planned, mostly around the July time. We will be able to publish these on the abmc.gov. User will be able to find the schedule of these celebrations online. And we are also connecting some of our visitor centers to the event. For example, in the Lafayette Escadrille Memorial, we will be switching some of the part of the exhibition to connect to the event. So you will be able to find quite some interesting events at that moment.
That'll be great. And then as you look ahead, I know there was a lot of effort to roll out this online catalog. What will you be looking at a year or two from now to find out if it's been successful, if people have connected with it, if it's had the impact you hope?
Well, we, of course, have the technical aspect of it. We are able, to monitor the number of visits and to tell if people are interested in. I think what will be very important for us is if we hear feedback from people, like visitors, if they come to cemeteries and they talk about it, like, oh, I've seen that chair for real, but also online. That will be a very good way for us to know if people are interested. I think it will also be efficient for us if we are able to build this network and connection with other cultural institutions. I think if we are able to reach out to other structure and create a connection, having them loan us items and us loaning them, that would be very interesting. And hopefully we will be able to highlight more and more of the collection, building, more of this virtual temporary exhibition. And this collection, what is great about it's currently we have several items in it, but it's still a working process. We are still adding items to it. We are still identifying elements. And so it's growing like our mission, we're adding additional stuff. And so we will have plenty of more opportunities to talk about it.
I've been speaking with Charlotte Meunier. She's museum curator for the American Battle Monuments Commission. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing this amazing resource with us.
Thank you so much.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up next, ARPA H's One Cure program is betting that smarter design can expand cancer care to more people faster. This is the Federal Drive with Terry Gerton on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Drive with Terry Gerton on Federal News Network. The promise of ARPA H isn't just speed, but intention, building ambitious research programs around patient impact rather than hype. One of its newest efforts aims to make cancer treatment simpler, more accessible, and easier to deploy. Here to explain the vision behind One Cure is the program manager, Dr. Wilfred Ngoy. Dr. Ngoy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
ARPA H announced a program last month called One Cure, and it's a really ambitious idea using a single, widely accessible treatment approach across many kinds of cancer. When you think about this, what problem is the One Cure program trying to solve that existing cancer research hasn't been able to crack?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So In the United States, there are about 2 million new cancer cases every year. There are about 600,000 deaths. There are hundreds of different cancers. Patients have to deal with high cost, months of grueling treatment. Sometimes you can go into years of treatment. And so, ARPA H, obviously focusing on bold, high risk, high impact approaches. So we thought, why not change this? Why not change this for American populations, so that you don't have to, go through all these months of grueling treatment, pay this high cost, So that's why we came up with the one comprehensive universal radiotherapy approach for everyone. And the really great thing here also is that this approach can work for multiple cancers, so not just one cancer, because cancer has hundreds of different types of cancers. And so each one of these different cancers has a different treatment approach. So what if you could just have one radiotherapy approach that's low cost, and you can use that for treating all kinds of cancers?
At a high level, how would this approach work? You've just described hundreds of cancers. They all manifest differently in the body. How could you have one solution?
Yep. So this is really the important question to ask. The way our bodies are designed to fight disease is through our immune system. And so remember that cancer is just part of your body that goes rogue, and it starts to divide and grow, but your body never really knows that it's a bad thing. And so if you can show your immune system that the cancer cell is bad, then your immune system can take care of the cancer. And so the approach here is essentially use this one radiotherapy to damage the cancer and force the cancer to take off the camouflage. It normally hides itself from your immune system. And so you force it to take off that camouflage, and then your immune system can say, aha, so you are bad. You're not really a healthy cell. And the immune system can take over the process of eliminating this cancer. And because you're just showing the cancer to your immune system, it doesn't matter what type of cancer it is. All you just need to do is show your immune system that this cancer cell is bad. And so we use this approach using radiotherapy to do that.
And the radiotherapy is one part of the solution set, right? What is the other part?
Yes, you're absolutely right. So radiotherapy is just one part of the solution. You use that mainly to damage the cancer, force it to take that camouflage off itself. But cancer itself is very adept. It's very smart, trying to find ways to evade the immune system. And so the second part of it, and this is a really critical part of the program, is number one, we use what we call smart radiotherapy biomaterials. These smart radiotherapy biomaterials force, they target the cancer, and they force the cancer to be expressed to be shown to your immune system, so that your immune system can now take over the process. So you can think about these smart biomaterials as the ways that empower your immune system. Your SEAL Team 6. If you think about SEAL Team 6, that attacks the cancer, it gives it ammunition to be able to then attack the cancer. So that's one critical component of the program. The second one is with the advent of artificial intelligence, we don't want this to work only for some patients. And so with AI now today, we can actually develop what you call a treatment planning system that can allow you, if you're coming into the clinic and you are a patient, say pancreatic cancer or lung cancer or breast cancer, if you put the type of cancer into that treatment planning system, tell what the size of the cancer is, where it has spread, you can use that system with the help of artificial intelligence to make a treatment plan and say, use this amount of radiotherapy and this dose of the smart biomaterial to be able to empower your immune system to cause a regression of the cancer that you treated. So that's the second component of that.
I'm speaking with Dr. Wilfred Gua. He's the program manager for the One Cure program at ARPA H. Will, one of the things that stands out about this program is it's focused on low-cost, widely available treatment. Why was affordability and global access built into the design from the start?
Yes, affordability is really it's not even just, it's really at the core of this program, because we know that patients deal with a lot with financial toxicity. So we say not only the treatments that we have for cancer today are toxic, patients always have to deal with financial aspects of that, right? And so we wanted to make sure that, this is accessible to everybody. So that's why we say one comprehensive universal radiotherapy approach for everyone. And so the critical component here is by using that smart biomaterial, we can use a very small amount of drug. So if you think about today, you are taking your chemotherapy or immunotherapy treatment, literally you get infused with, these drugs. You take these drugs over and over for weeks and months and years. But if you are using this smart biomaterial, you can target a very small amount of that immunoadjuvant or drug so that it goes only to the cancer. And then it's released gradually over time to then empower your immune system to take over. So you don't have to keep injecting drugs over time, week after week, into years. And so that really goes to saving the cost for patients. And you can go back to your work, and to your family. And that's really critical because, nowadays in the United States, cancer treatments can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and many people cannot afford those.
That is an exciting prospect. Yeah. If you're a cancer patient today, what should you be thinking about in terms of the timeline that this program might deliver results?
Yes, ARPA H is, the director usually says ARPA H is like a time machine, right? So some things that take, decades, we can shrink that down to a few years. So the program is planned over 5 years. The goal is that, we can put together really the best team, the best minds across the U.S., including across the world, who can really be part of this. Think about an Avenger team against cancer. And they will really work within these 5 years, where we can move that from, engineering these biomaterials and the treatment planning system. And then by the time we reach year 4, we can actually start, clinical trials, which is really going to be important for that clinical translation so that, cancer patients today can be able to access that. Now, I would say ARPA H is really unique here because typically these things can take decades. But with our flexible funding and the ability to, build these kind of teams, that makes it really accelerate the process.
And as you go through the research, ARPA H sits at the center of that. What is your role in orchestrating research at a variety of different sites and labs and technologies?
Yeah, so as a program manager, that's a really great position to be, is that, right now we're just, we launch the program, but we let everybody be able to provide their ideas. And then this can be across different institutions, across geographies. So, and then I build a team. So the team can be from Florida, can be from California, can be from Washington, D.C. And so I bring all these people together to start working on this project. And so my job is to go across, meeting these teams, monthly sometimes, making sure that the work is going forward. And so it brings people literally across geographies. And my work as a program manager is to, work with these people, facilitate that.
I've been speaking with Dr. Wilfred Gua. He's the program manager for the OneCure program at ARPA H. Thank you so much for sharing this exciting possibility with us.
Thank you so much, Terry. Thank you for having me.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts. The Trump administration is widening its lens for recruiting technologists to the federal workforce. The Office of Personnel Management has just expanded the Tech Force hiring program to include opportunities for cybersecurity specialists. Here with the latest is Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. Drew, thanks for joining me.
Nice to be with you, Terry.
We've talked a little about Tech Force before, but give us some background. Refresh us. What is the end goal of the program?
This all started back in December when the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, said that they'd be launching this new recruitment initiative where they're essentially looking for technologists in a variety of sectors. So that's data engineers, software engineers, And now they are adding in cybersecurity specialists to the mix. But the end goal here is to hire about 1,000 employees who are going to be assessed by OPM and then potentially hired across different agencies to work on tech projects. These would be temporary roles, so they would serve for 2 years through TechForce and then maybe get hired somewhere else, or OPM has said that they could potentially move to the private sector or elsewhere after they finish this 2-year program. We don't have a lot of details yet necessarily on the progress so far on hitting that 1,000 employee goal. But generally what they're trying to do is, focus on tech talent, focus on early career talent, and a lot of what OPM has said are skills gaps in the government and have been for many years.
OPM has tested out TechForce, I think, on the first cohort. What's the process looking like?
So the process, the hiring process from OPM's perspective is that they conduct the initial assessments. So that involves various evaluations like a technical assessment, reviewing their resumes, having some sort of initial screening interview. And they're using a shared certificate process for this hiring to take those initial assessments from OPM and then create lists of qualified candidates, which agencies can then go in if they have the budget and the interest in hiring TechForce candidates and recruit off of those shared certificate lists that OPM has made. So far, we've already seen shared certificates for software engineers and data engineers. And once agencies make those selections, those employees would presumably move into those agencies to start their two-year programs.
And have the agencies exhibited a lot of take-up from these shared certificates?
Again, not a lot of details yet on how many employees are being hired or brought into agencies. What I've heard from OPM most recently is that it's still in the works, but they're trying to onboard candidates on a rolling basis. OPM said that agencies have started making some initial offers for TechForce roles, but they didn't give a specific number on how many of those have been offered. But at least some number of tech hires are expected to be made by the end of April. So just the next couple of weeks, we might see a little bit more information on what this is going to look like, which agencies are involved, and maybe whether some agencies are more heavily interested than others. So there's a lot of question marks still, but having the new cybersecurity role in there, I think will maybe generate some more interest, at least on the applicant side, and get that through the pipeline as well.
What have the federal job prospects looked like for cyber employees more broadly lately? I mean, with DHS under a funding lapse, the big organization there, CISA, doesn't seem to have an opportunity to bring folks on board.
That's absolutely right. I would say that the job opportunities in the federal sector are pretty limited, especially for early career employees who are looking to get jobs in the cybersecurity field. I know that you talked with Justin just yesterday, our colleague, about the Cyber Corps Scholarship for Service program and the fact that CISA has just announced that now for the second year in a row, they're not going to be offering internships to those Cyber Corps scholars. So that's leading to a lot of questions for those early career employees and those young employees who are interested in working in cyber in the federal government. So it's possible that, this opportunity from OPM and through TechForce might be of interest to some of these employees who otherwise would be out of a job prospect or otherwise looking to get a job in the private sector instead.
This opportunity, this TechForce strategy, also comes after agencies have lost a lot of tech talent over the last year. What's been the trend there, and how does OPM think that this opportunity will balance out those losses?
Well, if we look on the biggest picture possible, agencies have lost approximately 400,000 federal employees since President Trump took office. That's a huge portion of the federal workforce. If you pair it with some of the hiring efforts that we've seen, which have been relatively limited at agencies, that is actually a net loss of about 272,000 employees, again, in the last year and a half or so. But if you look specifically in the tech sector, there have been some significant losses there. The 2210 job series for IT management, which is a very big job series across government, they have lost 18,500 employees and some change, plus or minus, since the Trump administration started. That actually makes it one of the top 10 federal positions in terms of numbers of staffing losses since President Trump took office. So there's a huge gap there. And it's possible now with this Tech Force program, maybe with some other hiring opportunities across agencies, that they are looking to fill some of those losses. You know, as we know, and as we've spoken about pretty extensively, Terry, a lot of the workforce reductions that have occurred were, at least on paper, voluntary. So that means it was not exactly necessarily the balance that maybe agencies were looking for. Maybe they lost more tech talent than they actually were wanting to or needing to. So it's possible things are going to turn around now. And, you know, at least from the way that OPM talks about it, there is a tech skills gap in government, and something that agencies are most likely interested in.
But it may take a while to see how this all plays out and what the new normal balance is.
Absolutely. I think we're going to see, at least in the short term, maybe some hiring through Tech Force, but that's only 1,000 employees. And if you look on the bigger scale, there might be a lot more talent needed in different areas too. That's Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. Drew, thanks for joining me. Thanks for having me. You can find her full story at federalnewsnetwork.com. The Federal Drive with Terry Gerton is produced by Eric White and Michelle Sandiford. Our web editor is Stephanie Wright. For the latest updates, stay with federalnewsnetwork.com or follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I'm Terry Gerton. Thanks for listening.